Hey, everybody, welcome to the midweek edition of Next TMT Talks, our little audio and video adventure with our pals over at Media Play News. In the middle of the week, we have a special guest, Tyler Denk, the CEO and founder of Beehiiv, which is the platform upon which we run our newsletter, Next TMT. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the big news that they have put out in the last few days as we look also more generally at the whole universe of these smaller media companies that are now getting more and more sophisticated across multiple platforms and how they're trying to solve some of that. We'll get into some news. It turns out just today, the European Union waved through the Paramount-Skydance / Warner Brothers Discovery. It is impossible to say that quickly. Merger, which leaves only some disgruntled attorneys general in 12 states to say maybe not so fast. And we got a few other odds and ends we'll probably get into, but that's a pretty good start. So welcome, Tyler and Daniel, my co-founder, Tyler
Yeah,
Denk.
Tyler let us use this platform. They didn't even do a background check on us, Dave. They just let us in.
Well, that's why we're able to use the platform. So I'm just saying, thank goodness for that.
And
Open
how
platforms, we love these.
how has using the platform been?
Well, I've never used any other newsletter
right.
platform. Let me just say
Person
that.
only.
Well, but
Um,
the reality is you have been on content management systems of one kind or another. I have since the 80s.
Listen, these guys are trying hard. You guys are always iterating, coming up with new schemes, new get-rich-quick schemes. And what I like about your get-rich-quick schemes is they involve your users,
Getting
Tyler.
rich.
So, and that's kind of what I guess in October of 2024, being a neophyte, I'd heard about. You guys really focused on the aspirations and goals of your users. And I heard that sponsorship was an easier goal through Beehiiv than it was the competition. So that's what drew us. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what's going on. There is a lot of competition in your area, and you guys have done some pretty notable additions
Well,
to features.
let's talk about the big news things that he's got. He's got a whole
Yeah.
community feature going programmatic on the ad side. You got AI MCP, I guess is the term of art that is being rolled out to basically let AI write all this stuff so we don't have to even think. It's not like I do, but and a few other odds and ends. So you got a much better, a more WYSIWYG, as they used to say back in the day,
Yeah, we love
WYSIWYG publishing platform. You got a lot. It's a lot. What were you doing all week?
Well, talking to you guys now, to Dan's point, jokes aside, our thesis really is we want our users to grow as fast as possible and to make as much money as possible. And I think if as a platform we can deliver on those, most of our users will be very happy. Happy to talk through some of the recent announcements. I think it might be helpful actually to take a step back for a second and kind of tell the quick story of like what Beehiiv does and like how we got to this point. And I think that will dovetail nicely with the most recent announcements. But at a quick highlight, I was previously the second employee at Morning Brew, which was a wildly successful email newsletter. We scaled it to 4 million readers. We sold it for $75 million to Business Insider. And as I led product and engineering and growth there, we built this entire bespoke ecosystem to create newsletters, to grow them faster and to monetize them. And so Beehiiv, we launched this with two of my co-founders in 2021 to be the best.
But Tyler, you built that while still with Morning Brew, or coming out of that, having done that with Morning Brew and scaled it up, you said we can do this for everybody else, right? Is that the process?
Yeah, exactly. I joined Morning Brew and I built the content management system that the writers use to create the newsletter. I built an ad management platform for the sales team to monetize the newsletter. I was running Facebook ads. I was building funnels. I was scaling the newsletter. I was building dashboards. So while most of the credit goes to the writers and the content for being fantastic, we also had built a well-oiled machine that made all of that possible on the back end, which was kind of my doing. And so through that experience, we received hundreds and thousands of emails from our readers who were also operating a newsletter at their business or as a side project, who looked at Morning Brew as this North Star of like, this is what a newsletter could and should be. And we want the same software that they use. And they would ask me.
But they weren't going to do that, right? They weren't going to say, no, it's not our business to be a service provider. We're we're a site, right?
I pitched it.
So,
I pitched it, and
oh,
yeah, I
okay.
pitched both the co-founders to say, "Hey, I think what we built is like the demand was very obvious because we would get thousands of emails asking for the software, and what the readers wanted was they thought that we were just using software vendor X, and they just wanted to know who should we use,
Right.
but there wasn't software vendor X. It was a totally custom thing that I had built along with my co-founders there, and so once I saw that demand, I pitched the two co-founders saying, I think we should build a SaaS platform here. We already have the distribution. We send an email to 4 million people every morning. Like, how many companies would die to reach 4 million people every single morning? And we're already
Us,
seeing that demand.
we
Yeah.
would die for that.
Same.
We
Just
follow
to
Same.
clarify.
100,000.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we yeah, so I saw the opportunity there, and I pitched both of the co-founders. What I didn't know at the time is that they were already in talks with Business Insider to sell the company, and it's a little bit of a curveball in the middle of this diligence to disclose that you're now a SaaS platform in addition to the media company. So they rightfully or wrongfully shot down my idea, and who knows what that would have done to the deal? Who knows if I'd be here if they were super enthusiastic about it? But yeah, I think that was really the impetus for seeing what that potential could be and eventually launching Beehiiv. So if you fast forward a year or two, in 2021, we launched with my two co-founders. The goal was Morning Brew in a box. Like, can we build the best newsletter? Can we allow people to build, scale, grow, monetize their newsletters better than any other platform? When you look at the broader email ecosystem, a lot of the ESPs, MailChimp, Campaign Monitor, Sale-Through, they're typically for e-commerce or they're for marketing emails. None of them were actually built for content-based emails, which you could also
Well,
argue is
MailChimp was like a mailing list manager first, right? And you would kind of put stuff on it, but it was really about your mailing list, and it really wasn't graphically compelling or any of that stuff. It kind of monkeyed around with this.
I see what you did with the monkeyed around there.
I'm mostly
Totally.
just throwing poop.
So
But
most of the email platforms are primarily for marketing. And if you look at the landscape, I think historically you would have people who posted content on their blog on WordPress, then they copy and paste it into MailChimp. And if they wanted to monetize, there's like third parties for that. If they wanted a referral program, there's software for that. And it was just like a very convoluted system of piecing together 6 different things. So the value of Beehiiv and what I saw at Morning Brew is like, if we can just bundle this all together, you can create a newsletter, you hit publish, it also goes to your website. It's SEO optimized. If you want to monetize, we have an ad network. If you want to grow faster, we have a recommendation network, we have referral program. And so that's kind of how we got our start, was just packaging and productizing what we built at Morning Brew. So any newsletter operator had access to those same tools.
Question
did you
though, at
kind
that
of
time,
when you started out, were you basically just saying, "Here's what we did at Morning Brew, chunk, let's build that. We know how to do that," or did you already start to put some bells and whistles in there? You certainly put some in there last week with the announcement, but I mean, that first project, I mean, great time to go in stealth mode during 2020, right? That's a good time to be developing because, like, what else you going to do?
was
But did you? Was it basically Morning Brew
Substack
at that point?
What were you going to say, Dan?
was Substack even a factor at that point when you're ramping
Yeah.
up?
So Substack launched about like 4 years before us, I think 2016, 2017.
Okay.
And so
Sounds right.
what it actually helped give me the motivation to build the company. I think most people would see that competition as a reason why not to go into that market. But at the time, and Substack has grown more advanced over time, but at the time, the common chatter on Twitter was that the product was terrible. There's no customization. It's very limiting in what you can do. And then they raised a Series B. I think they raised like a $65 million valuation. And I saw that as, I know what I built internally at Morning Brew is so much more powerful than what they built. But what they built is worth $65 million. And what
Right.
and here I am on the sidelines as like an employee at Morning Brew. So I think that actually gave me a lot of motivation to say that there was a wedge in this market, that they were building something. But what I wanted to build was literally the exact roadmap that I know works because it worked for Morning Brew. And if it worked at Morning Brew, it should work for XYZ other newsletter or media company who wanted to use that software. So that was kind of the gap that I saw. They got a 4-year head start on us, but we have caught up quite quickly. And I feel we're kind of even diverging now in terms of, I think they're trying to build a social media platform. We want to be tools and infrastructure to help support creators and publishers to build their own standalone business, not to intermediate between the content creator and their audience.
So to answer your question from the outset, what drew us to Beehiiv was the sort of flexibility of monetization. You had a lot of ways, a lot of fortresses, a lot of ways to attack, I think is the saying. And one of them was, I mean, if you were Oliver Darcy or a big name journalist, you could migrate to your own newsletter and accumulate a lot of subscribers right away who would pay based on your name, based on your skill set. I mean, a lot of these guys are good too. We feel like we don't break a lot of huge scoops, but our background is analysis and good writing. And either Dave and I had huge names, although in niche circles we're respected. And we thought we could create in kind of a controlled circulation trade environment. That's we work for trades like Variety, Count the
Deadline.
Yeah, a lot of them. And we felt like, specific groups of high-level decision makers will listen to us. It's not a mass audience, but it's, a good one. And if you can sell sponsorship against that, you can have a business. You don't need to be viral. And I guess that flexibility, we didn't see that anywhere else. Were you designing for that kind of one-size-meets-all mindset, or what? How far into the sort of publishing model did you consider, I guess?
Yeah, pretty deep. I mean, to even just compare and contrast Substack for a second, I can like dovetail more into like our vision here is I think the Amazon versus Shopify analogy holds up pretty well, where at Amazon, there's millions of third-party sellers, but no one actually knows them. You kind of just go to Amazon.com or the Amazon app. Amazon collects a lot of data on the customer, passes very little back to the merchant. It shows up in an Amazon box. Amazon owns that entire customer relationship. I view Substack and the ecosystem they've built very similar. You go to the Substack app. They try to convert your readers into their users to download the app. They've intermediated. They withhold data. And you, even just in the verbiage, like you launch a Substack or sign up to my Substack. We are the antithesis of that. Like for Shopify analogy, like they have millions of merchants that have built their own storefronts that are custom branded, and you would have no idea that they're even built on Shopify. And that is how I want us to be for content. We should be the tools and infrastructure that's operating in the background to make it possible for Oliver Darcy to leave CNN and stand up his own media company that's not a Beehiiv or a Substack, but it is Status News, and it's his own brand, and it's totally built around what he wants to build, and we should provide the infrastructure and the flexibility to make that possible. So I think philosophically, they're very different. From a business model perspective, we are a flat rate SaaS. We don't take a cut of revenue. And I think that caps a lot of large publishers and content creators where you are paying a fee, and fees typically only go up because there's only one way for them to increase revenue, and that's increasing that take rate. We don't take a take rate or fee from any subscription revenue, any product revenue, or anything. So I think it's a better business model for publishers. And then there's just like the flexibility. We are building enterprise level software. A lot of our largest users, whether it's Time and TechCrunch and Newsweek and Sinclair, come from very enterprise level solutions that we built from our experience from Morning Brew. And we're making it accessible to like the consumer as well at like a consumer accessible pricing. So that's where the real innovation I think has been. And I think just adding that flexibility where you can build the business that you want is where our users really thrive.
So in terms of the new stuff, community is an interesting choice. So it is absolutely a challenge to build community on the existing gigantic platforms if you're trying to start cold, right? But you guys are saying don't go into the wilds of TikTok and YouTube. Let us build you something that you control, and that's your space. And I find that a really interesting approach, or way to think through how do I connect and stay engaged with beyond the newsletter, the people that are interested in what we have to say. Talk about that.
Yeah, it might help just quickly to run through the evolution. We started with newsletters. We launched websites as well. People wanted a place to host their newsletter. You kind of need a place for people to sign up to the newsletter. So we launched a website builder where you can build your own website. Once we launched that, people wanted more. They're like, okay, now that I have this website, I want to sell something, whether it's products or templates or guides. So last November, we launched digital products. So people are selling their expertise, whether it's a how to get started with ChatGPT to here's my cooking guides, but like you can sell whatever your expertise is. Of 3 months ago, we launched podcasts. You can host, distribute, and monetize your podcast directly on Beehiiv. And then what we launched last week is community. And the thesis there is the most successful publishers and content creators are multi-channel now. And going back to what the ecosystem used to look like, you used to have to piece together 5 or 6 different pieces of software to get anything done. And then you have different data silos. Your website data lives over here. Your newsletter data lives over here. Your community is over here. I think most publishers don't want to deal with that. I think having having it all consolidated into a single platform is much user friendly, and there's a lot of benefits we get from that. So the community angle is, now that I'll use my newsletter as an example, I send a newsletter every Tuesday to 130,000 founders and startup people. It's called Big Desk Energy. It's all about entrepreneurship, basically, and how I build the company. I have so many ambitious founders in that list that I've met offhand, and they would benefit from getting to know each other. But there's not a space for them to actually connect. And that's where it flips from me being the only one who can create value in this ecosystem, which is me sending the newsletter every Tuesday, to me launching a community where there's value just from people getting to chat and meet each other and learn from one another outside of just me. So that's kind of where I see the community angle. I'd push back and disagree. We're not saying don't use TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. I think those channels are great for distribution. I think there's a lot of value. There's hundreds of millions of users there. I frequently post on X and LinkedIn, and I utilize those platforms as well. But I think there's something about an algorithmically driven platform where there's no guarantee of reaching your audience versus a newsletter where you own that audience and that distribution reliably, and a community that also you can reach those people as well. So I think that's kind of how we differ and think about the ecosystem.
Well, you are moving fast. One thing I find energizing and inspiring is the level of iteration on the platform. I mean, it's grown tremendously just in the 18 months we've been on it. But it's for folks like us, it's a little hard to keep up sometimes. Some of the product tutorials are for stuff that was, a couple of iterations ago. I guess I'm boggled a little bit, but how big is your technology staff? How are you moving so fast? And are you challenged with bringing your user base to use some of these new tools?
Yeah, I think you're hitting on the right question. And it's not just you guys. I think most people actually struggle to keep up at how fast that we move. And the Achilles heel of launching a few updates every week is that videos and tutorials does fall out of date. We actually just made a hire this week, and that should change pretty quickly. But yeah, we're aware of that gap and trying to fill that pretty quickly.
Hey, tell the guy that does the Asian chap. I don't know his name, but he goes really fast. I want him to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, I'll let him. I'll relate him to go a little bit slower. That's great feedback for us. Yes, we need to invest a lot more in our what we call user education and tutorials.
How needs to put the video on X.5.
Yeah, I guess you could do that, right, Dave?
Yeah.
Audio.
Yeah. So our engineer product design team's probably 40%, 50% of the company. It's definitely the biggest part of the company. Technically standing, how we've been able to do it, we have a lot of full stack engineers that can do front end and back end and QA and a little bit of design. So we're able to move quickly there. I think a lot of it just comes from the DNA of when we first launched. I think David asked this question way back when I think you both asked a question at the same time, so I didn't answer David's. But when we initially launched the business, we were the most nascent platform in a sea of MailChimp, Campaign, all of these competitors who had been in business for 10 plus years and had a very robust platform. We had built this over the course of 10 months and offered maybe 5% of what all of these other platforms offered. And so I can do my best job to build hype and sell people on trying the platform. They'd very quickly realize that we didn't offer 90% of the things that the other platforms offered. And so the name of the game for us was, how do we ship as quickly as possible to bridge the gap and make it so our users don't churn and leave the platform. And once we built that muscle of product velocity, we just never stopped. It became a core competency of the company. And we're still shipping multiple updates every single week. I think the space is evolving a ton. It's important to listen to our users. We've created so many super fans of people complaining to me on X about a feature that sucks, and then us pushing out an update 2 hours later to fix it, and they're a fan for life. And I think being able to actually listen to our users has been like one of our biggest advantages. That being said, I think we've met, especially with this last event last week, I think we've met a point of maturation where we aren't reaching for the next big product update. I think we have everything from newsletter, website, podcast, community products. Like that's a very strong foundation, and I think serves 99% of their users' use cases. Now it's just, can we make all of those 10 times better? And can we make the product experience easier? Can we make it easier to adopt those features? Can we provide the right resources so they can use them seamlessly and our guy speaks slower so everyone understands what's going on? So it's that's kind of like where we are now as a business. Like after that event last week, it really is around maturation and making it best in class.
So that kind of is interesting about where you could even go, because it does feel like it's obviously a much fuller suite. I mean, the programmatic stuff I find interesting. The AI tool is really, I was just noodling around with ChatGPT's lower reaches and finding all these apps I could connect into my ChatGPT subscription if I wanted to. And I was like, well, I'll do it with Zoom, but I'm sure not doing my finances with that. But I guess this means you guys have a front end. How would you how would I take advantage of a Copilot that you would now have built in with that MCP to further supercharge newsletter awesomeness?
Yeah, I think so. Three months ago, we launched an MCP, which allows you to connect your Beehiiv account to ChatGPT or Claude. And so the consumer trend there is a lot of people are using, let's say, Claude or ChatGPT to do daily work, whether it's, can you recap this meeting? Can you help me understand my business? Like, can you connect to Slack and then Zoom and Google Calendar? And so more and more work is happening in these like AI clients, and giving Claude access to your Beehiiv account allows you to say, who are my most engaged readers? Or I'm going to launch an IRL event in a month. Who should I create a segment to send that I think is like the most likely to come because they've engaged with all of my content? Or where are my missing opportunities to monetize? Like whatever you want to ask, you can view ChatGPT or Claude, who has like the power of indexing the entire internet. And by giving it access to your Beehiiv account, it knows all of your posts, your content, your automations, your segments. So it's just like an assistant essentially that you can use like on steroids. The MCP has probably been the highest NPS thing we've ever launched. Like people who have adopted Claude and ChatGPT to do more of their work, having access to your Beehiiv account has like totally transformed their workflows. A super stupid example is you can create content tags on your post that help it index on search, and also when people go to your website to know like what are the different types of stories that you're writing. I got lazy and forgot to add content tags a year and a half ago. And so I have 65 posts that don't have a content tag. It would have taken me an hour and a half to go through each of those 65 and assign it a tag. But I asked Claude, I was like, hey, look at the posts that do have a tag, categorize, understand why, like what I wrote about and why I marked it with a specific tag, and then take the 65 that don't have one and just assign a tag to all of them. And it did it in 3 minutes. So like just one stupid of like many examples of like, it just helps to have these AI agents doing work on your behalf of work that I otherwise would not have done. What we launched last week is called Copilot. And it is basically everything I just described, but in app. So rather than using it in Claude, it's directly in Beehiiv. It knows what page you're looking at. You could be looking at a dashboard and be like, can you help make sense of this? Like, what are the questions I should be asking? And it understands your business and kind of do that analysis for you. So I think broadly, the way that I think of AI is a lot of content creators and publishers spend X amount of time creating content and a lot of time doing the admin work around their business. We think AI can actually invert that, where you're spending more of your time focusing on content and the things that matter, and you can augment a lot of these admin tasks.
I feel like that guy in that movie Limitless, I think it was Bradley Cooper, who kind of staggers around trying to get through life, and they give him this drug that allows him to use the full potential of his brain. I think we use probably like 5% of your capabilities at this point, Tyler.
And we stagger around. I just want
We
to
do.
emphasize we stagger around a lot.
What's funny about that is like that is an interesting, like we keep building new things because a lot of our customers come to us asking us to build these new things, and we solve problems for them. And I actually think more than like a email platform, we are a engine to solve people's problems. They come to us, they know we can ship good features and we can deliver. But yeah, you get into this interesting paradigm where people feel like, hey, I'm using one of the 30 things that are in this platform. And they almost feel like it's not as much, even though we haven't raised prices in 3 years, they're like, I feel like I'm paying for something, although I'm only using a fraction of it. And I think that is an interesting paradigm from like my lens of like how I have to manage expectations and how we communicate the different value of the platform.
Well, it feels like you're so good at programmatic advertising that if you're just a little bit diligent and open-minded, even with a small audience, you can monetize your way to flat pretty easily. And I wonder how many people know that
That's our North Star. It's how many users are actually generating more revenue on the platform, whether it's ads, subscriptions, products, than they're paying us. Because if you're paying us $100 a month, but you're making $1,000 a month, it's a pretty good trade. And I don't think many people are going to churn off that platform. So yeah, monetization is a huge proponent of how we continue to grow.
I'm really curious. The other thing, I guess, is you got the WYSIWYG, you got the Copilot, Programmatic. What's the step up though here? Because you could, since we came on, so and so wants to advertise, and you're in the list here. Is this good? Is this to further automate it? It automatically places it within a window, and we don't even have to go through that process. Or how's that work with whitelists and
Yeah, exactly.
blacklists and all that?
Yeah. So the way that the ad network works today and previous to programmatic ads is a lot of our users want full control and choice over what advertisers go live in their newsletter. And so they want to monetize this newsletter. They type /ads and they can see a portfolio of sponsors that are available to them at different rates of pay in different industries. And you can choose, you want the AG1 ad. And we usually have a few options of creative. You can say, I like this one, wording and framing better than this one. And you drop in your newsletter. So in the fact, it's like 2 or 3 clicks, but you can choose your sponsor and you get paid out a few weeks later. Even though that sounds super intuitive, as we've gotten larger publishers onto the platform, a lot of them work in this programmatic world where they separate editorial from monetization. And they don't want the people in the newsletter choosing which advertiser to run because that's not.
Yeah, don't be doing that. I mean, journalist monetizing is an adventure. There's no doubt about that. So you're trying to automate some of that and kind of take it out of, as much as they want to, take it out of there.
So programmatic came primarily for our enterprise segment of like the Times and TechCrunches of the world who do separate their journalists from the monetization angle. And they just want a programmatic ad block that sits in their newsletter, and they do allow lists or block lists, and someone has control over that. But yes, we will automatically fill that with the most relevant ad.
We met an interesting guy, a peer at an event we were recently at, Rick Ellis, who was going through considerable pain at the time, transitioning from Substack to Beehiiv. But he wasn't looking back. He was pretty convinced it was the right move, and I think he remains so. Are you guys reaching out to folks and poaching and recruiting, or are they stumbling on this themselves, or what can you tell us that doesn't get you in trouble?
Nothing will get me in trouble. We have like a growth and
famous last words, sir.
He's a founder. He can do whatever he wants.
I'm just saying his mother's going, Tyler Horatio Denk. Let's just talk, sir. But anyway,
nothing on this topic will get me in trouble, to clarify.
Okay.
Right. We have a marketing and growth team that's focused on like building different campaigns and being able to communicate why our platform is the better platform for a lot of these writers and journalists. We don't really have a concerted effort around poaching writers from any given platform. Like we don't have an internal effort of like, here's the 500 best Substack writers and like we should convince them to use our platform. We're doing cold outreach there. Yeah. The same way I was actually asked on a podcast yesterday, because we've had a lot of journalists leave large legacy media companies to go independent and launch on our platform. And like, we also don't, even though this was Substack's initial strategy 8 years ago, was let's just poach all the biggest writers at the New York Times and the Athletic, because that media likes to write about media. We get all of their best writers, then they'll write about it, and like that becomes like the great migration from legacy media to independent. And that is how Substack built the name for themselves. we don't poach, like, especially like a lot of those legacy media companies are our users as well. It's like typically they come to us, like we've planted our flag as a landing spot for independent journalists. We have something called the Beehiiv Media Collective, where we cover their health insurance, some legal coverage. We give them Getty images. We waive the fees for the platform. So we make it a very nice landing spot for them. But it's usually a pull versus a push. Like we aren't reaching out to these newsrooms and convincing them to go independent. They know where to find us and typically come reach out to us.
Well, and actually, the reality is they're often given the opportunity to become independent, but whether they like it or not, it's like you have a new career opportunity
Well, hey, you could
presented to
go
you
over
by
to
your
Beehiiv.
now former employer, so you can go wild. But I do think what's interesting about this, and one of the things we were going to get into briefly was a bunch more layoffs at ESPN of notable on-screen personalities who absolutely should be doing deals with people like you, with a podcast, with a newsletter, if they've got that background, and a lot of them do, and to have a broader reach. I mean, this feels like an era of the printing press returning to the Ben Franklin days, when it's just a guy and his means of output, writing Poor Richard's Almanac, or in this case, Poor Dan's Almanac, Poor Daniel. I mean, it
Hey,
feels like it's that time. Well, he
I'm
wasn't poor, and neither are you, but I'm just saying. But the point is that it's the smaller operators that have a way to monetize, reach an audience, distribute, produce, and all the rest.
I have a
And
question, and this is for you, Dave. Who was the guy at ESPN? He's doing his show, and he finds out he's fired. Who was that? Do you know?
was it Ravitch? Carl Ravitch? I think Carl Ravitch was the guy that this last week.
I mean, one of the things that I like about this life is that unless I get this note from Tyler, you got to go. You got to go to Substack. Just get your stuff and go. I don't care where you go. But really, I could just set up somewhere else. So maybe wouldn't be as good. You're never worried that one email you're going to get is just going to ruin your life. It's an encouraging, inspiring feeling to be independent.
Totally get that. And Tyler, what are you seeing about, though, this shift? Because, the big monoliths are calving off stuff. They're splitting up, but they're fracturing. And the people are getting, particularly younger audiences, are getting their news. They're getting their information from a wider array of sources, from TikTok on up. As you mentioned, don't give up on TikTok just because you can't dance. But it feels like you're kind of hitting a moment. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I posted on X the other week that I think the creator economy is the future of media. I think you're seeing it in all sorts of facets, whether it's legacy media getting smaller, whether it's a lot of the top talent from legacy media going independent, and I'd consider them broadly a creator. Whether it's the growth that you're seeing, like the explosive growth on all of these channels and platforms, from YouTube to Instagram to TikTok, whether it's the box office and seeing some of these hits that are made for less than $1 million, but they have a creator, director, and fan base behind it, putting up like a 300x ROI. I think, and hopefully Beehiiv plays a small part in that. In what we are doing is making it easier. We have a very generous free plan. You can start it as a side project. And there's so many case studies where someone signed up, created a newsletter, turned into a couple $100 a week, which turned into a couple $1,000s a week, which turned into their full-time job, which turned into them then hiring a team to create more content and build a business around it. And I think it's very freeing and exciting to be able to create content on your own terms. And I think there are tools like ours that make it easier and more possible. Again, like what YouTube did for video and monetizing video is what we're trying to do for newsletters and eventually podcasts as well. But to have a newsletter, send it to 10,000 people and not need to know a single person at HubSpot, but have HubSpot pay you a $5 CPC, like that's very democratizing to be able to actually generate real money on the internet. And hopefully that kicks off that flywheel.
Absolutely.
The flywheel will get there, Viv. Let the flywheel spin power.
So shifting now from Tyler's enabling of smaller media empires, let's take a peek over the European Union, normally a strident foe of capitalism and consolidation, said okay on that whole Warner Brothers Discovery / Paramount Skydance merger, which is a bit of a surprise because
Wasn't it? I
there
thought it
was
was
some thought.
expected that they were always going to make those concessions with, they said they wouldn't do any more business with Universal, and that was always expected.
That part was expected. They'll say whatever needs to be said. The question is, were there other reasons that they might hold it up for political reasons or whatever? And none of that proved out. So it leaves it all in the hands of one lawsuit, which, to be frank,
Actually, it's two
you know,
lawsuits.
well, two, but
WGA still
one
has their
is,
going. They're not
yeah,
consolidated yet.
they're not consolidated yet. We'll see how much oomph the second one has. The AGs, I think, probably carry more weight in the courtroom, but possibly not. So we'll see. It's a couple of lawsuits trying to block it on antitrust grounds, which may or may not work when it goes up the ladder. So we'll see. What do you
Well, I
think, Dan?
created a tough situation because the judge, in the case of the 12 AGs, the judge ruled specifically that her antitrust concern revolved around major motion pictures. I think with the combined entity controls 27% of the market, which isn't 30% the threshold, but it's close enough. And
And the
if you
threshold's not written anywhere. It's 30% is from some case law. So maybe that holds,
right,
maybe it doesn't.
and
Yeah.
you have a precedent now for a solution to be suggested by Paramount. So I think it kind of tips the odds in favor of Paramount moving forward with this thing. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of CNN journalists unemployed and starting newsletters.
They'll be calling Tyler up saying, how do we do this? The good news for the CNN folks is they have been trying to transform from being just a cable channel with a bunch of arguing people under Jeff Zucker to a company that is digital first. So they're trying to do what Tyler enables, but on a bigger enterprise level. So now they'll probably have some opportunities to call Tyler up and say, I'm going to be a media star without a big media company behind me, which is this big thing. I don't even know how they go about that. So you said you guys have got some stuff to help ease some of these folks in the door, but it's a little intimidating. You know, Dan and I had been doing essentially the predecessor of our newsletter for his previous employer on a weekly basis, and then they pulled the rug out for him, under him and a couple other publications. And I said, we don't have to stop. We could still do this. And he was like, "Oh, never thought of that." So here we are. But
Here we
it's
are.
kind of like that. I mean, I think a lot of folks are like, yeah, I guess I could do that. I just want to write, that's the thing. But it's more
Totally.
than that.
I do think
know?
there's a difference in what we've seen with like the media collective and some of these independent journalists of just because you're an amazing journalist doesn't mean you actually have the entrepreneurial muscle to build a business around it. Right. Like I think like what makes Oliver unique and some of the others is like they are very entrepreneurial. Like they're launching events, they're launching podcasts, they're thinking about sponsorships, they're good at hiring, they know how to find the right people to surround themselves with. I don't think every journalist could and should strike it out independent. But there's definitely a subset that are exceptional at it.
Yeah. I mean, Dan has discovered the joy of selling sponsorships. He's like, wish I'd figured this out 30 years ago.
Joy.
You're pretty good at it, though.
I mean, money, Dave.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I'm just saying, that was a thing we were thinking about in J school a while ago. And then all of a sudden.
One of the things that we had to decide early, and this is, I'm going to segue into a question that you may or may not want to answer, Tyler, was that it was right at the dawn of the new administration. They got elected 2 weeks after we launched our newsletter. And we have these very kind of directed political beliefs, and we decided we were going to let our progressive flag fly early on. And reading along those lines and being somewhat politically tinged, I noticed today that one of the journalists that we work with occasionally and follow, Carl Boat, was complaining about Substack and all the white supremacy platforms they support. Does this come up in your line of work? Do you find stuff on the political fringe that you don't want as part of the network or what's your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly, not as much as you would think. I think we are pretty big believers in freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. And like where we differ from like Meta or Substack or these different social feeds is there's actually an algorithm behind it that is proliferating this content. And as you know, like rage bait and more political things get proliferated more frequently into these different feeds. But we explicitly are not an aggregator or a social feed or algorithmically driven, right? So I actually view us like we aren't, they have their top publishers. They have Andrew Tate as like, the number one bestseller on Substack, right? Like that's an editorial decision that they are promoting
Is
and
that
doing.
true? Is he?
At one point he was.
Yeah.
So like that,
He may have a little challenge with access coming
yeah,
up.
or he might be making a comeback when their
Yeah,
algorithm. Who knows?
right. We'll see.
But like that's like they've taken more of an editorial stance, and they have an algorithmically driven platform where that type of content does get proliferated to other users. We are much more closer on the stack to like a WordPress. Like WordPress is like an infrastructure to create your own blog or website somewhere on the internet. And I don't think WordPress, I mean, there's some egregious WordPress websites out there, but it's like WordPress
Yeah.
isn't promoting that content to other people who don't want it. If you want to be as far right wing or left wing or anything in between and love this content or hate this content, and you want to post about it in your own little circle of the internet, and you can get 500 people who sign up and read it, and it doesn't cause harm to anyone else. Like we have a terms of use, like there's something around violence and there's other things that like are not allowed on the platform. But loosely, I'd say like we are very forgiving, and freedom of speech, I think, is pretty important. It's not really for us to determine what's right and what's wrong.
Hey, speaking of newsletters that have gotten all grown up, are you a Letterboxd guy? Are you one of those guys? You know those people. So Letterboxd is a site that people share their favorite movies. And basically it's sort of the equivalent of you used to, well, there was a window of time there where it used to be you would go and look at somebody's LPs, and then they kind of moved on and it was CDs, and then it was DVDs. You had your DVDs to show your movies that you loved. And that lasted for like, what, Dan, 15 years, something like that. And
Right.
now it's all blown up. But a letterbox is a place where you show off, okay, I love, I don't know, Taxi Driver,
Yeah, I signed
whatever
up
it
for an
is.
account for it. Yeah. You missed
Yeah.
your favorite movies, and
Yeah,
supposedly it's
and so there's a
more.
set of very, very intense fans, though, for this news site about people with a specific interest, to kind of showcase their stuff. And now it's once again being looked at by some potential buyers, A24, which puts out a lot of movies that a certain set of folks really, really, really love, so much that they can sell A24 merchandise. And Comcast, which nobody has merchandise for except Comcast employees, and they're not even sure they want it, or they're going to be spun off into a new company and it won't matter. But they're both looking at it, much like some of these sites like Rotten Tomatoes and
Netflix was looking at it
IMDb.
last week.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been a long string, but it's interesting to think about that, because a site like Letterboxd, if it gets bought, because it's about fan love, right? And if it gets bought because it has that audience, you want to be able to market your movies to them. But I wonder if it undercuts that. What do you think, Tyler? Is something like that that's an aficionado site, if it's owned by one of the players in that space, does it sort of debase the currency?
Hard to say, right? It's kind of like what TBPN
Oh yeah, right. They got bought.
and OpenAI, right? Like I think the thesis was obviously they came out and said that they are going to be totally unbiased and report and chat and do media and I guess journalism to whatever extent. Neither of them are journalists, but to that extent, they were going to continue creating content unbiased of being owned by OpenAI. I don't know the terms of the deal. My assumption is it was heavily equity, like very heavy equity, right? Not just cash. And so there's no way to be unbiased when your wealth is directly correlated to the company that you are reporting on or creating media for. That being said, I
Right,
don't know
you're not crapping on their semi-imminent IPO, because you probably got some options in there, right? I mean, there's no
That
way
said,
you're going to say that's a bad idea. So,
Dylan Oberscotto, their Ruben Kincaid, their manager, unsubscribed us this week, Dave. I think it's something you said. That's neither here nor there. There's something wrong
probably
with that.
something
I'm talking about
probably
TBPN.
something I said. Yeah, it's
my
usually
point there
something I
was
said.
they're obviously super talented, but the thesis after that acquisition was that people would stop watching as much or wouldn't view them as credible because they're kind of state media at that point coming. They're speaking from the lens of OpenAI. I personally don't care, and I don't watch them all too frequently anyway, but like I don't know what the viewership looks like before or after that acquisition, but that's like something maybe to look at, similar to the letterbox type thing of how much do people, if the functionality is kind of the same, how much do people care who the owners are? Like I think that's maybe overblown a bit in some circles, and most people don't even know that Instagram's owned by Meta, right? Like I think most
Right.
people don't
Right.
know own
Or
search.
YouTube by Google, I mean,
Yeah,
or
I
for
don't
that
think it
matter,
slowed them
Alphabet.
down. I had a chance to meet those guys a few months ago. They were in town here in LA trying to get some Emmy love, I think with special category or most innovative platform or something like that. And I mean, they're still getting fantastic guests. I haven't seen their numbers, but the energy momentum seems to charge on. Somehow they do 3 hours a day, 5 days a week of podcasts. I think finding it, and their level of production is just off the charts.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's just an incredible product. I was more so making the point of like that's the only thing I could think of, and I have no idea how much consumers care that they changed ownership.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
was
I
actually
agree with that.
the monthly mixer that I co-host and have done so for 11 years, or nearly 12 years now. We actually partnered with some Emmy folks for a TVPN thing. I think you were there at that, Dan, right? So, and talked to them. So it is interesting to see something like that try to maintain some sense of independence. You're right. People don't always walk it back up the ladder, but people sometimes do. And some people have long memories. So, I mean, no one's worried about their next meal. They're going to be fine.
So
But I
it's
do
all of our
find it
way,
interesting. Yeah.
Tyler, to ask about the exit strategies. Or a giant multinational about to poach and integrate Beehiiv? What do you foresee happening over the next 5 years? Can you talk about that at all?
Why
Can't
didn't
talk
you
about it.
buy
I wish I.
BuzzFeed? Talk about an overlap between your
Yeah, if I.
brands.
You don't have to answer any of this stuff. I think you know that.
Yeah, no. I'm saying I'm happy to talk about it, but if I knew it was going to happen over the next 5 years, I'd probably be either a lot more stressed or a lot less stressed on a day-to-day basis. So, honestly, no idea. I try not to think more than a quarter at a time. Like it's a useless exercise for me to think beyond 90 days. We're pretty laser focused on like I know exactly what we have to do this quarter, this month, this week, and I think if we continue to execute at the level that we have been, there's doors that can and should open that I'm not even privy to thinking about right now. So hard to kind of predict in the future, obviously, but we're just kind of laser focused on right now.
Well, that's probably a good place for us to wrap this puppy up. Our midweek conversation alongside our partners at Media Play News. I am David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT and Next TMT Talks, here with my co-founder Daniel Frankel and the CEO and co-founder
Co-founder.
co-founder of Beehiiv, and that is spelled in a unique way, designed to be able to be found on the internet, I suppose,
Or
with
not found.
HIIV, or not found. No,
I know it's
ideally found, but Beehiiv with HIIV. I'd rather have those kinds of hives than the other kind.
totally agree there.
Uh, but thank you,
That was
Tyler, so
underwear.
much talking about some of the things that you guys are getting into and some of what's going on out there in the world. You can like, share, subscribe, comment. We like comments and at Next TMT. That's Technology, Media, and Telecom. And thanks for listening along with us. And we're going to look forward to exploiting Beehiv's many new capabilities as soon as we can figure out which way is up and become a vast media empire of our own. And I don't know, maybe we'll buy Fox or something.
That's the
See
plan.
how it works out. That's the plan. So with that, thanks everybody. Thank you, Tyler. And thank you, Daniel. Over and out.